Now time for our feature, Carolyne Wright, who's been here multiple times over the years. As you noticed earlier, she is not only a poet, but a translator of other poets. She's been instrumental in the poetry community for more decades than I want to count, because that makes me old. Please welcome Carolyne Wright. And I'll be going around with the big and giving. Any money goes in here, we'll go to Carolyne. Big round of applause for her.
Yeah, well, let me see. I just need a place to put the books.
Okay.
I don't cook the books. I just stack them there. Yeah. Yes, that's very good. That's about the right height.
Give us Carolyne one more time there.
Thank you, everybody. Woo! So much. Thank you for coming, and thank you all for your wonderful work. It's very inspiring to hear other poets read, and then I always love thinking of ways in which my own work perhaps can reply or, in some way affirm and just confirm and embrace all the other poems and poets and sensibilities out here. So with that, I made this whole list of things that I might read, and I might kind of throw it out. I think I'll read a little differently than I intended, but that will be fun. I'm a poet, but I sometimes get called, and I'm going to open the water bottle. I need the water, so I'll leave the bottle open here and hope I don't set it down and then it spills. I've been called, in academic circles, I actually piled it higher and deeper, that's the abbreviation, the letters of PhD, pile it higher and deeper. But actually, I was regarded as, I was sort of like too creative, really, to do a serious academic doctorate, which never interested me. But then I was also regarded as, among poets, as being fairly into making all kinds of literary and historical allusions and references in my work. So years ago, I had a job at the University of Washington. It was a sort of an administrative job, and so I wrote this poem. It's actually the first poem in my first book, which was called Stealing the Children. But this poem is called The Cosmic Scholar. Secretary to the thoughts of others, I grow each night to be the tenured scholar of all galaxies. I gaze out at the ancient history of stars, lights years old and centuries apart. Anywhere we are, my text tells me, is the center of a universe on the exhale. Stars hurtle out from every other star, like trees felled by a meteor. They speed up as they go, locomotives on an incline, or small boys sneaking out of school to fish. If we caught up, the novas we've chased would be old suns, ulcered with spots. By now I'm lost. The horsehead nebula's nostrils quiver. I race Ferraris around Saturn's rings. Before sleep, I shift down spectrum, blue to gold to red, and gather soberly my scattered notes. Assembling once again a face like a chart of the periodic elements, I leave it for the morning, the ditto sheets and cold white stairs, and follow the receding pulsars of the heart the stellar vapors reeling as I go. Duane, how much time do I have?
You can go, usually it'd be till like 7:45.
Oh, that's
and then,
good, yeah.
And then you have 15 minutes to sell books, but if you want to go a little deeper, feel free to.
Well, that's okay, that's okay. I am fine with wherever I need to stop here, because I know that it's always good to leave them wanting more. So I'm not going to overread. I'm not going to read too much. We had that infamous date that will live in infamy, at least for this generation and our generations. We had September 11th, 2001. As you know, there was a previous September 11th. That was the September 11th, that was the military coup in Chile. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and read a poem for that, because Eugenia is here, and Eugenia is from Chile, and she lived through September 11th, el 11 de septiembre de 1973, right? This is a poem for, and I found one thing I wanted to do. I was choosing poems that had to do with performance, with giving readings, with like we're doing here. So one place that I was in Chile there was a folk music club called La Peña de los Parra. And it was not a lot bigger. I think it was about the same size as this building. And you'd go in there and you'd pay, I think what, 10 escudos, it wasn't much. And you'd get a glass of wine with it, and you'd get to hear the most renowned folk singers and performers of that era. Among them, Victor Jara. And many of you may have heard his one song that's very well known called "The Right to Live in Peace." And he became the fact that he was killed a few days after the coup. He was killed on about September 16th, 1973. He was arrested at his place of work. He was a professor of theater at the State Technical University. And he had gone there, and the coup happened, and he was arrested with a bunch of other people, and somebody recognized him and said, just basically singled him out to be killed. So when I heard about that, I was in Chile from 71 to 72 during the time of Salvador Allende, the president who had a 6-year term. He was kind of about as communist as the French government, as Macron and Mitterrand and all those people. Well, we haven't tried to overthrow the governments of France yet. Although I believe that what do they call it now, Mortar on the Potomac is trying to annex Canada. But anyway, enough of that. When I heard that Victor Jara had been killed, I was horrified, because I had heard him sing any number of times while I was there in Chile. I would go to that club with friends of mine, and we would get a little wine, and we'd listen to the music, and we were very moved by that. And Victor Jara was interesting. He came up to me, people came to recognize me. He came up to me and said, "Oh, la gringa, ¿cómo está?" And he gave me a big hug. And he wasn't very tall. He was maybe an inch or two taller than me, but he was this immensely towering figure of love and human compassion and human rights. So I found myself writing this poem for him. And it's called Victor Jara, 1932 to 1973. He hadn't even turned 41. He was 40 when he was killed. And the poem begins with an epigraph from a colleague of his, Isabel Parra, who, when she and her brother and their families were able to get in exile in Mexico, she wrote a song for Victor Jara called Como una historia, which is like a story or like a history. And the two lines from that song are the epigraph. And they are, son años pasados presentes en mí, eres ya en Santiago y te conocí, which means they're years past, present in me. It was then in Santiago, and I knew thee, or I knew you. Victor Jara, 1932 to 1973. So I'm here again, 5 feet away from you, on the makeshift stage of the Peña de los Parra, and you're singing the right to live in peace, still in your actor's leather jacket, embracing your shadow in the guitar, the darkened room taking its shape around you. You tell us of Camilo Torres and of Amanda, the young woman who ran through your town's wet streets to meet her lover and found him gunned down at the factory gate. What do you think of us, students hunching forward to listen in the smoky light? Glasses of vino tinto beside us, the room deep and wine-colored. Allende's photo behind you on the wall. We follow your lead, singing the choruses over and over. We stand when you do, chanting otra, otra, till you sing another. The fields of Chile in your voice, your guitar speaking its human song. I never talked to you then. I'm shy as rain in your country, the language too much yours. You stand between sets in the crowded patio, one among many, those who sing La Nueva Canción. You're not even one of my favorites. Did you know then that shadows would swallow the back galleries like memories no one could get used to? That you'd sleep in shifts those last days, taking your turns at the locked gate, the shortwave radio crackling with surveillance. You'd refuse the last chance to destroy the tapes, your songs filled with those who did what they had to, lined up against walls of the Estadio Nacional. How could you believe it when the time came and your voice grew too big for the cell where they broke your hands because they couldn't make you stop? Once again, it's September, and I sit in this small kitchen listening to Isabel Parra sing Como una historia, her lament for your death. Her voice breaks in the tape, telling the names that make nothing easier, our words that cannot reach you, foghorns sounding all night on the river like a story from someone else's life. Where to go from there? I think I'm going to go somewhere completely different, and now for something completely different. You may know that I have an alter ego named Eugene, or actually Eugene has me. And I used to be, a poet with an alter ego named Eugene, but now I am a holographic projection of Eugene. So, yeah, figure that one out. So I'm going to read, and this is sort of by request or implied request. This poem, alas, a number of Eugene poems are in the new and selected, so if you want to read more of them, that's the best way to do so. But this book, Mania Klepto, the Book of Eugene, is currently almost out of print, and this is Eugenia's copy, because Eugenia did the cover. This is an image that Eugenia did, and as you can see, here's Eugene and here's Eugene. So, but I got a request the other day to read this one, and it's a bit long and episodic, so I think I'll read this one, and then I'll read maybe one more after that. And then if you want to hear more, well, I got some books.
Can they take you home with them and then you can just read in their living room?
Oh yeah, I'd be happy to go from, well, it would take, I need a little overnight bag to go from house to house. But anyway, I'll send you Lean. How's that? This was actually started. Euleen and I were at a big art museum in New York City, and we were sitting there at a table in the cafe, and this poem began to happen. Actually, I think it was the Ancient History Museum. It wasn't the Art Museum. It's called Euleen's Broken Lifeline. Because a fortune teller once told me, oh, you have a broken lifeline on your hand. I said, oh, does that mean I get 2 lives? She wasn't pleased with that answer. But the poem begins with an epigraph from the poet William Blake, that wonderful self-educated autodidact who shook his stylus hand in heaven. And he was one of the romantics, except that, like the poets of the generation before him, he capitalized all his nouns and verbs. So his poems kind of look like the original documents like the Declaration of Independence, because all those guys with their powdered wigs capitalized all the nouns and the verbs, right? And even the adjectives. But William Blake had a wonderful series of little one-line poems that were called Proverbs of Heaven and Hell. And this is one of them. If the fool would persist in his folly, he would become wise. So, Euleen and I were sitting there persisting in our folly. Years ago, the fortune teller scowled at Euleen's broken lifeline. Euleen laughed later, back in her room with her jogging shoes and type A lighting. Her books, Creative Rage, and How to Prioritize Your Options. She knew all about the body's planetary pull, how the population bomb and landfills of garbage on the fault lines, the I-beam weight of cities, had thrown the crabbed old zodiacs out of kilter, and no one but she was in charge here. Her own guru and commandant, with the power of plus-charge thinking. What else was there to go for? She was climbing the corporate totem pole, one wolf mask at a time. She still believed in potlatch over scalp, hand over fist, taking things slowly, proceeding with a woman driver's caution, where the pay scale needle hovered for years on hazardous. She believed in interest rates and the cost of living index. She made down payments on everything in sight. Then her broker ran off with her analyst, like the dish with the spoon. Her horoscope was filled with I told you so's and volcanoes erupting on the dark side of the moon. The spider threads in her safety net gave way, and Euleen sat down hard in the epicenter of her cluttered life, trying to explain the confusion. She used the circus seal method of balancing her checkbook, worn t-shirts that said, I don't get mad, I get even. Loved only men with dark hair and green cards and one-way tickets to the edges of the earth, where drop off was a command, not a caution sign. She'd sown nothing but downfall teeth all along. Now she sits in the Ancient History Museum cafe on no admission charge afternoons, eating melon balls and goat cheese off other visitors' abandoned plates. In the free brochures, she reads up on see-through pleats from Cheops to the Ptolemies. Her own clothes, quiescent for a change, with their lived-in, dyed-in look. But she's not complaining. She's still at the receiving end of a long dynasty of hand-me-downs. She has her youth, her health, her weight on the Chase Manhattan scale still lower than her IQ. She has her wide-open calendar and a dial tone in which anything could happen. She's planning her comeback like a facial makeover, a before and after inside job, as if all the king's scarabs and all the king's paws could cast their jackal-headed spells and slap her back together once she's cracked along her plate lines like a tectonic egg. She ignores the warning flashing in the center of her palm, which beams its memento mori at her like a small-town traffic light at 3 a.m., faithfully and for no one. Poor, forked fool, Eugene, persisting in her folly as if wisdom will trickle down someday like the rain, or a supply-side theory in her brain. That's probably enough Eugene. So let me see. Where do I want to go from there? Oh, I know where I'm going to go. I'm not even going to get into this book. This is the most recent book. It's called Masquerade, and to find out about it, you just have to crack it open, and I have some Oh no, I will read one poem from this. Thank you. I will read one poem, and then I'll read one after that, and then I'll let you go. Okay. This is a fairly serious book. It's about a relationship between two poets and artists of different racial background, different ethnic background, slightly different senses of values, but very fascinated with each other and sharing many of the same ideals. But there was also, and when the two of them were living in New Orleans, there was a whole series of circles and circles of very interesting characters, because as you know, New Orleans has a lot of very interesting people who live there and who gather there. One of them was a woman whose real name was Ruth Grace Moulin, who lived from 1934 to 2001. But she was known as Ruthie the Duck Lady, and here's a picture of her. I can pass this around, but it's got to come back to me. If you would like to see Ruthie, take a look at Ruthie. She's that is her vintage kind of early 80s look, her Santa Fe skirts and her roller skates and her fuzzy adolescent ducks who used to imprint on her and follow her as she roller skated down the street, a stream of curses just, you know, blooming out of her mouth. She was an amazing lady. But there was a photographer who took a lot of photos of her, a guy named David, yet another David, Richmond, who said about Ruthie, she's not out of touch with reality, she's just not interested. So, this was one of my encounters with Ruthie the Duck Lady down there in the French Quarter in New Orleans. It's called Endecasyllabics, about the women, Ruthie. Now, endecasyllabics, that's a line with 11 syllables. And for some reason, I found that a good form in order to tell this story. I want to talk with Ruthie, discover who is this woman inside the Duck Lady facade. The roller skates, thrift shop, wedding gown and veil, the fuzzy ducklings that parade behind her through the quarters on Mardi Gras. rumors of burly, blue-uniformed police watching over her, asleep on Jackson Square park benches. I find her in a nameless bar on Dauphine Street, plucking at her torn voile skirt and runs in her pilled cotton stockings. She glares when I ask to take a photo. That'll be $1. Her drawl is steely, her outstretched fingers ending in carmine-painted claws. I faltered before her scowl, her desiccated voice, her figure perched on a broken-back chair, tough as a folded bird. I hand over the $1, aim and focus. She sits up straight, grin grimaces for the flash. Then she nods, turns back to her glass with its Jack's Brewery logo. My deeper questions, they never had a chance. Okay, I was gonna read one more, and I think, yeah, I'm gonna read. Let's see. You get a choice. Would you like to hear one other Eugene poem? Eugene declares. Eugene tells her story. Or would you like to hear a confession from someone who tried to work in an establishment like this, but I was such a terrible, terrible waitress?
Confession.
Confessions? Oh, okay. We'll go. This is a manuscript that hasn't even been accepted yet, but I'm assuming that eventually it will be published. And this is a confession which is called "Not on My Resume." Let me get it out here. I don't know what it's printed on the back of, but don't try to read it. Okay. Several years ago, Eugenia and I edited an anthology of work by poets, by women poets about work, called Raising Lily Ledbetter, Women Poets Occupy the Workspace. Well, I am not one of those poets or editors who put my own work in an anthology that I'm editing. I didn't do that. But if I had put a poem of my own in this anthology of women poets writing about work, it would have been this one. It's called Not on My Resume. Yeah, and Ruthie could have written this one too. But anyway, I quit. I meant to tell the manager, Lurleen, as soon as I ducked into Pizza Haven that Friday afternoon to collect my final paycheck. Any of you who are old enough, you may remember the Pizza Haven in the U District. Pizza Haven, all right. This was a day off from my first crummy job at 17. Tail between my two thick legs, I slunk into the air-conditioned cigarette smoke chill. Remember, everybody used to smoke? Skin damp, cheese and pepperoni, a greasy, feasty haze. Pizza hell, I call the place. I was almost ashamed to show up. I was such a lousy waitress, mixing up orders, begging smoker co-workers to empty the ashtrays on my tables, smoothing unused napkins and pushing them back into the spring-loaded metal dispensers. I slowed the whole operation. Even then, a reduce, reuse, recycle fiend before the slogan had even been invented. Lurleen met me in the aisle between tables whose oilcloth covers I never could wipe clean. She straddled the passageway and growled, "You're fired." Her bulldog jaw worked as if a wad of chaw had found its rhythm and was perfecting its moves in her mouth. Get your paycheck and clear out. She blocked my way to the kitchen, her eyes drilling me with a roomy blue precision. I stammered, as I had when frat jocks slapped my derriere and each other's backs, then stubbed out their Marlboros in uneaten slices of perfectly good pizza. I would have wrapped up and taken home on the sly. It would only have been thrown away. As I'd stammered when Dirk, the afternoon cashier, had caught me at the end of my shift, sliding uneaten slices wrapped in wax paper into my handbag. You can't fire me, I quit, I finally blurted. But Lurleen had already stumped back to the server's station to stack the plastic garlic bread baskets and yell at the new girl to wipe down the red and white tablecloths, almost as checkered as my resume in all the decades since that day.
Okay, so we have about 8 minutes to
8 minutes? Oh.
to hang out with people, to chat with people, talk to Carolyne, purchase a book or two if she has some available.
I have some books.
Also, if a poet's words move you, let them know, because it's important for poets to know that their words matter. Thank you for everyone who came out. Hopefully we'll see you in the coming weeks. Next up, please welcome Eugenia. Did I pronounce that right? Big round of applause here.
Gracias, ahí estamos bien. What happened is that Carolyne Wright is my translator from Spanish, so we have been working for many years. And most of the time when we go together, we present together poetry also. My name is Eugenia Toledo, and I come from the south of Chile, La Patagonia, La Araucanía. And I'm, well, first let me explain you, Carolyne and I, we published this book called Map Traces, Blood Traces. Trazas de mapa, trazas de sangre. That it was my introduction to Chile after to leave Chile in 1975 for political reasons. So,
Yeah. Oh, I almost said Trump, no, it was Pinochet. At that point, Eugenia was, you were like an assistant professor.
no, I was a professor.
You were a professor.
A
You were
young
already-
professor.
Yeah.
The Catholic University, thank you.
And, but because they suspect that her political views might not be yay, yay, Pinochet, she was dismissed from the post. And so there was no more future in Chile for, a career, an academic career, teaching and writing and all that. So she came to the U.S., did her PhD at the University of Washington. So,
Gracias, amiga.
and married David and stayed. Of course, David is very fluent in Spanish.
Which
also.
one of our Davids?
He's not here, my husband.
Oh,
He's
if
in
we have
Chile.
3 Davids,
He's in
you
Chile right
have
now.
a big
There's
choice
many
of Davids here.
Yeah, you have a wide
Okay.
selection.
And it's
of
not
Davids.
cheating as long as you stay with the David.
There are many Davids.
Yeah.
See, we know that, don't we? In this poem, which I love, I named the Isla Negra. I'm going to explain you that that place, Black Island, is not an island and it's not black. is the third house where Pablo Neruda used to live. If you go to Chile, you need to go visit Pablo Neruda's houses. This one was by the ocean, and at the time of Pinochet, there was a movement, women's movement, that they started crocheting and doing other embroideries against Pinochet, against the coup, and that work was the best and the first testimony against Pinochet in my country. They start the contract dictatorship.
So Eugenia is going to read the poem that's called, in Spanish, La Revolución del Tejido a Crochet, and I will read the English translation.
Gracias. Revolution in crochet. Hagamos un chal para que las mujeres pasen el invierno. Hagámoslo de albahaca y tomillo para la madre embarazada. Y de hojas secas de choclo para la campesina. Hagamos un chal para cubrir sus hombros. Hagámoslos para las mujeres de este cielo color tempestad. Una misma mujer con tantos nombres, cosido con hilos, transparencias de algas, con puntos de humo y niebla, lana atada a nuestros años. Un chal con sauces llorones y lunas para las tejedoras de Isla Negra. Un chal de barcos para las que fueron encarceladas en su tierra. Un chal de gaviotas para las poetas anónimas que hablan de la realidad. Un chal de acordes crepusculares para las mujeres mayores. Un chal informe para huir de este sitio terrenal. Dejámoslo a crochet como en los tiempos de la colonia. Punto abajo, punto raso, punto triple, hasta que se nos desgasten las manos los tejidos de la resistencia. Viva Chile Libre, yes.
So here it is in English, which was Eugenia and I worked on this together. Revolution in crochet. Let's make a shawl so the women can spend a warm winter. Let's make it of basil and thyme for the pregnant mother, and of dried corn leaves for the country girl. Let's make a shawl to cover her shoulders. Let's make it for all the women of this storm-colored sky. One just like it with different names, sewn with thread, seaweed transparencies, with stitches of smoke and fog, wool tied to our ears. A shawl with weeping willows and moons for the weavers of Isla Negra. A shawl with ships for the ones who are imprisoned in their own land. A shawl of gulls for the anonymous women poets who speak the truth. A shawl of twilight harmonies for old age. A shapeless shawl for departing this earthly place. Let's make it of crochet, as in the times of the colony, down stitch, flat stitch, and triple stitch, until we wear out our hands, the fabric of resistance. Okay, it's Eugenia Toledo. Full name Eugenia Toledo Renner. In Chile, you have two surnames, and you do.
Big round of applause.